Dear students, I welcome you all to this lecture on Plato's concept of Philosopher King. The main objectives of this lecture are to understand Plato's concept of Philosopher King, to understand the context in which Plato developed his idea of Philosopher King, to understand the role of Philosopher King in Plato's ideal state, to assess the strengths and weaknesses of Plato's Philosopher King model, and to explore how Plato's ideas about the Philosopher King can be applied to contemporary political and social issues. The concept of the Philosopher King is a key idea in the political philosophy of Plato as presented in his work The Republic. In Republic, Plato discusses the ideal form of government, which he calls a Callipolis or a just city. In this ideal city, Plato argues that the rulers should be philosopher kings. According to Plato, a philosopher king is someone who possesses both love of wisdom and a deep understanding of the forms, which are abstract, ideal concepts that represent the true nature of reality. These philosopher kings would be the most just and knowledgeable individuals, making them the best rulers for the city. Plato believed that such rulers would act in the best interest of the community and would pursue wisdom, virtue, and the common good rather than their personal gain. The idea of the philosopher king is closely linked with the achievement of virtue. Plato's ideal leader is fundamentally based on the conviction that genuine leadership necessitates the possession of virtuous qualities. Plato had the experience of being a philosophic advisor to young Dionysius II of Sicily. He was invited by young Dionysius II to come to Sicily to be advisor of the new prince and to turn the king into a philosopher. While this endeavor did not succeed due to suspicions, it reinforced Plato's conviction in the necessity of a philosopher king for an ideal state. Plato thought of his philosopher kings not as lawgivers but as administrators. Plato is credited as the pioneer of a systematic political and administrative framework for structuring an ideal state. The primary aim of such a state is to cultivate virtue in its citizens. Therefore, the state primarily serves as a moral role in the lives of its people. Plato likens the state to a human body in which its components work together in harmony, complementing one another. Plato's concept of philosopher rulers aims to address two prevailing issues in society. The first is the prevalence of ignorance, where individuals without knowledge are often mistaken for being knowledgeable and govern the state. The second problem is meddlesomeness, which signifies unwarranted interference by those lacking both knowledge and the virtue of governance, leading to an absence of excellence in governing. Plato's primary concerns revolved around the misplacement of virtue manifested in the rule of those who lacked knowledge of governance and the resulting injustice caused by undue meddling in others' affairs. To rectify these issues, Plato proposes that people should be categorized based on their level of virtue and arranged hierarchically to ensure a more just and well-ordered society. In his work, The Republic, Plato outlines how arranging the ideal state or city in a hierarchical manner based on the order of souls can lead to a virtuous life and give purpose to the organized society, modeled as a state. According to Plato, human soul consists of three attributes, namely reason, courage, and appetite. All of them are present in human soul with one of them as a dominant element. Each soul divided on the basis with one element among the three dominant. These three classes mind their own work with dominant virtue as excellence and are dedicated to what is good for the city state rather than for themselves. So, individuals are by nature divided into those who love reason and who are fit to rule, those who love honor and who are fit to fight, and third, pleasure and material goods and those who are fit to work. Plato's societal hierarchy is structured around three classes: guardians, auxiliaries, and craftsmen, with the philosopher king occupying the highest position. This arrangement is designed to align with the inherent virtue possessed by each soul as determined by its nature. This hierarchical order is rooted in the specialized virtues inherent in the human soul, which are reason, courage, and appetite. Plato's philosophy of the philosopher ruler is grounded in the concept of the good, which is derived from the idea of justice as what is due, finding the appropriate place or role for the human soul. Plato illustrates this by assigning the cobbler the proper role of making shoes, aligning with his intended function. This act of fulfilling one's intended role brings about virtue, understood by Plato as excellence. Excellence, in his view, embodies two crucial elements: one, the functional specialization, and two, the absence of interference or meddlesomeness, which he sees as a source of ignorance. Plato believes that every individual has a unique and distinct purpose, and it can only excel when used in that particular capacity. Furthermore, he holds the view that each person possesses a dominant character trait, and there is no duality or multiplicity in an individual. It is evident that a person can only attain excellence by adhering to their dominant character trait. Additionally, he equates human excellence with his concept of justice, self awareness, understanding one's own blend of abilities, recognizing the predominant trait, and following it, essentially doing the work one is most suited for, represents the minimum requirement for justice. Practicing this work in a certain way and ensuring that each component within oneself performs its designated role constitutes true justice. In Plato's view, there was a need of uniting political power and knowledge. He argues, until philosophers are kings, or the kings and princes of this world have the spirit and power of philosophy, and political greatness and wisdom meet in one, and those commoner natures who pursue either to the exclusion of the other are compelled to stand aside. Cities will never have rest from their evils, nor the human race, as I believe, and then only will this our state have a possibility of life and behold the light of day. Inspired by Socrates' assertion that virtue is rooted in knowledge, Plato held the belief that the problems of politics and injustice could be eliminated by entrusting governance to knowledgeable individuals. In Plato's view, philosophers acquire this knowledge through their unique educational journey, granting them exclusive insights into the concepts of good, justice, beauty, truth, courage, and other moral virtues. Virtue, according to Plato, is a form of knowledge, meaning that when we possess an understanding of what is morally right, our actions will naturally be right. In other words, no one intentionally commits wrongdoings. If our correct actions are grounded in our knowledge, any incorrect actions must arise from a lack of understanding rather than a deliberate intention to do evil. According to Plato, among the guardians, philosophers are the most suitable for leadership because reason is the prevailing force within their souls. Plato's most fundamental philosophical tenet is his embrace of rationalism, as he believed reason governs the world, not God. According to Greek tradition, even the gods were bound by the rational laws of nature and faced consequences if they violated these laws. Plato maintained that humans possess the capacity to comprehend this rational order, provided they nurture their intellectual faculties through the study of mathematics and dialectics. Plato's vision of the ultimate human purpose was a life guided by reason. A rational individual dedicates their life to contemplation and acknowledges no authority other than their own capacity for reason. The philosophers, according to Plato, are not only possessors of the right type of knowledge, but are also the most suitable rulers because they lack personal interests. Plato strictly prohibited any form of private ownership within his guardian class. He argued that an individual might be tempted to act against the common good, not for their own benefit, but for the sake of their family. To eliminate this possibility, Plato forbade the guardians from having families. None of them were to be aware of which children they cohabited with were biologically their own. They were to view themselves as the collective parents of all the children, and likewise, the children were to consider themselves as having numerous caregivers. The guardians were instructed to live together in communal barracks, owning no personal possessions except perhaps a few personal items such as clothing. The basic necessities like food and clothing were to be provided by the produce generated by the farmers. In Plato's view, the philosopher king embodies the attainment of virtue and expects the philosopher king to possess qualities like knowledge of the good, courage and temperance, justice as the core value, philosophical self examination, education and ethical guidance, eradication of base desires. The human soul is divided into three components according to Plato: reason, situated in the head, courage or spirit, located in the chest, and desire, residing in the abdomen. Among these, reason holds the utmost importance as it shares a connection with the eternal and is considered the most divine aspect within a person. In contrast, courage and desire are entirely rooted in the realm of time and space. It is reason that possesses the ability to perceive truth and guides the virtuous soul in accordance with its insights. Reason represents the innermost essence of an individual, the true personality, while courage generally follows reason's guidance and aids in establishing its dominance. Desire is robust, self willed, contentious, unruly, and chaotic. It frequently opposes reason, requiring reason to act like a charioteer, managing two horses, one compliant and one untamed. A virtuous soul, according to Plato, is one in which reason prevails over courage and desire. The pursuit of wealth and power, which are limited commodities, often leads to conflicts, as individuals or states vie for them at the expense of others. True power should be bestowed upon those who will wield it wisely to guide people's souls towards the pure light of truth. This authority should be granted to philosophers because, just as Socrates referred to philosophy as the art of tendance of the soul to the soul, similar to how a skilled pilot ensures the safety of a ship, the prosperity of a state hinges on the presence of developed philosophers. The philosopher's pursuit is the unlimited good of wisdom, a pursuit that doesn't come at the cost of anyone and therefore doesn't generate strife. On the contrary, the more profound the philosopher's wisdom, the better it is for everyone when they can benefit from it by entrusting the philosopher with the governance of the state. According to Plato, the fundamental issue causing people hardships is that they are guided by individuals who feign knowledge but are in reality ignorant. These leaders are being led by people who lack direction. At most, these leaders have formed opinions about matters that unsurprisingly turn out to be flawed. The primary source of people's challenges is that they follow ignorant leaders who claim to possess knowledge but are equally uninformed. They are under the guidance of individuals who are clueless about their destination. In the best case scenario, these leaders have conceived ideas that prove to be incorrect. This situation is akin to individuals confined in an underground cave with a fire blazing behind them. Plato criticizes ordinary leaders for their lack of philosophical wisdom. He believes that these rulers are often motivated by personal gain, self-interest, and a desire for power, rather than guided by a deep understanding of justice, virtue, and the ultimate truth. These leaders are susceptible to corruption as they are driven by personal ambition and self-interest. This self-serving nature can lead to decisions that benefit them and their associates rather than the common good. Philosopher King, however, is seen as a figure who combines intellectual excellence, moral virtue, and a deep commitment to the welfare of the state. By placing philosophers in positions of leadership, he aims to create a just and harmonious society where rationality and wisdom guide the decision-making process. Plato asserts that differentiating between philosophers and those who hold mere opinions, the former are the most suitable rulers. By focusing on timeless and universally consistent principles, they possess the capacity to establish laws pertaining to truth, justice, and goodness for the city. Philosopher King is the one who contemplates all the time and all being. Plato is of the view that common good or good society will only be achieved under the guardianship of Philosopher King. He believed that concept of good does not change. Idea of good is never changing, for good is in the nature of things. Many opinions that men had formed about the good life and many views that men hold about a good are mistaken and leads to evil because the idea of good is permanent and only knowledge can know what is good. All knowledgeable men have only one and single idea of good. Those who believe that good, or for that matter truth, has many forms are mere opinions based on falsity and ignorance. The Philosopher King's main goal is to have a deep grasp of philosophy and the search for truth. Philosophers, because they possess wisdom, through knowledge, understand metaphysical, epistemological, and ethical issues. The primary responsibility of the Philosopher King is to protect and preserve justice in the state. They have to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and that justice is maintained. Rather than self interest, a philosopher king is dedicated to exact what is good, the well being of society as a whole. The main aim of a philosopher is to advance choices for common good advantageous to the entire community. For a philosopher king, reason rules supreme. These leaders make choices based on reason and critical thinking rather than sentiment of self interest. They have a logical analysis of things based on knowledge as virtue. Philosopher kings' purpose of personal gain is mutualized into the gain of entire society. They continue to expand their knowledge and wisdom, ensuring they remain enlightened leaders. One of the concerns for philosopher kings is to defeat tyrants and oppressive regimes. Their essence is to work to maintain a just and stable society. In Republic, Plato outlines a process for creating philosopher kings. The process begins with the early education of potential philosopher kings. The guardian class are subjected to rigorous educational programs that emphasize the study of mathematics, music, physical training, and dialectics. These subjects are intended to develop their intellectual and physical capacities. As these individuals progress through their education, they are observed and assessed for their intellectual aptitude, moral character, and dedication to the pursuit of wisdom. Those who exhibit exceptional qualities in these areas may be selected for further training as philosopher kings. Selected candidates undergo intense philosophical training, focusing on the study of abstract concepts such as justice, truth, and the nature of reality. They are encouraged to engage in critical thinking and dialectical reasoning to develop their intellectual capabilities. Moral education is also a crucial aspect of their training. They are instilled with a strong sense of ethics, emphasizing the pursuit of the common good and the well being of the state. They are taught to resist personal ambition and self interest. Philosopher kings are exposed to the teachings of the wisest philosophers and are encouraged to engage in philosophical contemplation to gain insights into the ultimate truths and principles that should guide the state. Once they have completed their education and training, these philosopher kings are expected to assume leadership roles within the state. They are entrusted with the responsibility of governing and making decisions that align with their deep understanding of justice and virtue. In essence, philosopher kings are made through a combination of rigorous education, philosophical training, moral development, and the cultivation of wisdom. They are chosen based on their innate abilities and dedication to the pursuit of knowledge and virtue. Plato envisions that such leaders, with their unique qualities, will guide the state towards justice, wisdom, and the common good. They have the responsibility to prevent an excessive influx of wealth and poverty into the state. They must ensure that the state does not become overly large. Their duty is to guarantee that the various classes fulfill their roles, and most importantly, they must ensure that no changes or new developments in education are permitted within the state. Plato's philosopher king places wisdom and virtue at the forefront of leadership. This seems a commendable approach, as leaders with a strong moral and intellectual foundation are less likely to be swayed by self interest and more likely to make just and ethical decisions. Philosopher King undergoes rigorous intellectual training, which can equip them with the ability to engage in critical thinking and to navigate complex societal issues with wisdom and insight. There is, however, a caveat to this schema. The notion that only a selected few individuals can rule based on their philosophical wisdom may not align with principles of equal participation in governance. The practicality of identifying and educating philosopher kings is questionable. Identifying such individuals and ensuring that their training is effective in practice can be a challenging endeavor. Plato's philosopher kings are granted significant power, and the lack of checks and balances on their authority raises concerns about accountability and the potential for abuse of power. The rigid structure of Plato's ideal society may not allow for diversity of thought and may suppress innovation or alternative perspectives that could be valuable for societal progress. Plato's Philosopher King places a heavy emphasis on reason, potentially neglecting the importance of other qualities such as empathy and emotional intelligence in leadership. In conclusion, by promoting philosopher kings as the guardians of truth and knowledge, Plato encourages a society where decisions are based on the pursuit of ultimate truths, justice, and the common good, rather than mere opinion or personal gain. His concept of the philosopher king presents an idealistic vision of governance, inspiring society to aspire to higher moral and intellectual standards in its leadership. Plato's philosopher king concept has both commendable aspects and notable criticisms. While it places wisdom and virtue at the core of leadership, its elitism and potential impracticality, as well as questions regarding accountability and adaptability, have been subjects of debate and scrutiny throughout history. It remains a thought provoking and influential idea in political philosophy, but its implementation in practice is fraught with challenges and concerns. With this, we come to the end of today's lecture. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Thank you.